Number 7. Karina Alvarez Flores. At about 8 a.m. on April the 8th of 2018, Nebraska resident Melissa Camargo Flores stabbed Karina Alvarez Flores multiple times outside her home in Sioux City, Iowa. An eyewitness followed Camargo Flores from the scene of the crime and was therefore able to provide the authorities with a description of the car she was driving. The woman was then tracked down by local law enforcement about a mile from the crime scene. Alvarez Flores was taken to a nearby hospital, where she was pronounced dead a short time later. Officers reportedly found blood-stained gloves and a bloody knife inside Camargo Flores' vehicle. Upon being questioned by detectives, the 20-year-old confessed to have waited outside the victim's house until she left for work, at which point she confronted and attacked her. It subsequently emerged that the two women had been in a love rivalry that centered on Alvarez Flores' fiancé, Lalo Perez. Camargo Flores also claimed to have been in a romantic relationship with the latter, although her report wasn't officially confirmed. The police clarified that there was no familial tie between Alvarez Flores and Camargo Flores, but the two women had reportedly experienced multiple issues with one another in the years leading up to the fatal altercation. In October of 2020, Camargo Flores pleaded guilty to a charge of second-degree murder. In December of that same year, she was sentenced to 50 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Number 6. Wilfred Isaacs Sr. A feud lasting several years between members of two traveller families from the UK culminated in a violent altercation at the Chubbards Cross caravan site near Ilminster, Somerset, on May the 5th of 2016. The incident unfolded after Wilfred Isaacs Sr. and his son had become embroiled in a verbal dispute with three members of the rival Broadway family, named as 24-year-old Charlie and his brothers John and Billy. It was later detailed how, as tensions between the two parties escalated, one of the Broadway struck Isaacs in the head with a metal bar, prompting his son to step in to defend him. Then Charlie Broadway allegedly struck the younger man in the face before firing a double-barrel pump-action shotgun at his father from point-blank range. Following the shooting, which resulted in 49-year-old Isaacs' death, Charlie and John fled the scene, prompting the authorities to launch a nationwide manhunt. Charlie ultimately turned himself in at the Bridgewater Police Centre the following day, while John was located in Lichfield, Staffordshire, on May the 7th. During the ensuing investigation, the police found several illegally owned firearms and ammunition at the caravan site, where the confrontation between the families had taken place. Following a trial at Bristol Crown Court, Charlie was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 34 years, while his brothers, John and Billy, were sentenced to 15 and 12 years respectively for their roles in Isaacs' murder. Number 5. Matthew Bodin. In the early hours of May the 1st of 2008, New Hampshire woman Yvonne Hernandez got into an argument with four individuals who taunted her for being a fan of the Major League Baseball franchise, the New York Yankees. Subsequent reports revealed how during a heated conversation with Matthew Bodin and three of his friends, Hernandez had boasted about how the Yankees had won more World Series championships than their rivals, the Boston Red Sox. The 46-year-old woman later testified in court that following her comment, the group of rival supporters had begun pounding on the hood of her car, which reportedly bore a Yankees bumper sticker. Investigators gathered from eyewitnesses, however, that Hernandez had driven away from Bodin and the others before turning around, revving her engine and plowing directly into them with her vehicle. Bodin was critically injured in the collision and ultimately passed away at the hospital a few hours later. In the incident's aftermath, it emerged that Hernandez had spent the previous night drinking at various bars before her run-in with Bodin's group. Her blood alcohol content was determined to have been twice the state's legal driving limit at the time of the deadly crash. In 2009, Hernandez was convicted of second-degree murder and consequently sentenced to 20 to 40 years behind bars. Number 4. Michael Brock. A 19-year-old Louisiana rapper was gunned down at an acquaintance's residence in the Sunset Acres housing complex in Bogalusa on June the 7th of 2021. Local authorities later revealed that the victim, Michael Brock, along with other members of the Tangipahoa Parish-based rap group 313, had been hiding out at the apartment after being threatened on social media by a rival group. A few days later, the police identified Torge Charles Taplin and Quadavian Tyvon White as suspects in Brock's fatal shooting. The two teenagers were reported as members of a local rap group known as the Fours, which had been involved in a heated rivalry with 313. White, who'd allegedly served as the getaway driver in the targeted shooting, was also connected to the notorious Chicago gang, Gangster Disciples. The Bogalusa Police Department collaborated with several other agencies, including the Louisiana State Police and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms in their effort to track down Taplin and White. The two teenage suspects were eventually located near Houston, Texas, and they subsequently led pursuing officers on a high-speed chase towards Beaumont. Both were eventually taken into police custody, whereupon they were formally charged in connection to their rival's murder. Number 3. Jason Isaacs. During a night out with friends in November of 2017, Jason Isaacs was aggressively chased through the streets of Northolt, West London, by a group of 4 individuals wearing balaclava masks and riding mopeds. Upon catching up with the 18-year-old, one of the masked pursuers stabbed him multiple times with a large knife. The assailant subsequently fled the scene, while a severely injured Isaac staggered into a nearby resident's garden and pleaded for help. He was rushed to the hospital, where doctors performed a thoracotomy, a surgical procedure that involves making a large incision between a patient's ribs in order to gain access to organs in the chest. In spite of the medical staff's efforts, Isaacs ultimately succumbed to the knife injuries. Following an investigation, local police determined that the attack had been perpetrated by members of a gang from Harrow. 19-year-old Joel Ahmad, who was out on bond at the time, was identified as the individual who'd fatally knifed the teenager. The police revealed that Ahmad's gang had an established rivalry with a gang from Northolt, with which Isaacs had been associated. Following a trial at the Old Bailey, Ahmad was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 20 years. Today's topic was requested by Dove Master. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Kisha Johnson. Nursing student Kisha Johnson and her younger sister, Sophie Smith, were at their mother's home in Fort Worth, Texas on the night of May the 30th of 2019. Johnson had reportedly been telling her mother, Darlene Brown, about her academic accomplishments during her most recent semester at university. Brown later told investigators that Smith, who was struggling with drug addiction and other personal issues at the time, overheard the conversation and became jealous of her sister. Although Brown claimed that Smith had long been envious of her sister's accomplishments, their sibling rivalry erupted into a violent confrontation that evening. Fueled by jealous rage, Smith allegedly threw an unidentified object at Johnson, prompting their mother to ask that she leave the house. Johnson then followed Smith to her car in order to record her license plate, and their dispute continued outside, as was later confirmed to the police by multiple neighbors and Brown herself. Smith got into her car and proceeded to drive directly into her sister, dragging her into the middle of a nearby intersection. She then reversed and ran Johnson over several more times before leaving the scene. The victim was taken to the hospital, where she was immediately placed in the intensive care unit. She had reportedly sustained a number of critical injuries, including cracked ribs, a broken pelvis, and a collapsed lung. In an interview with local news stations, Johnson's husband revealed that in addition to severe pain, she was having great difficulty breathing. Nearly a month following the incident, Johnson was released from the hospital and began her recovery process at home. Smith was ultimately arrested and charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Johnson publicly stated that she believed her sister should be punished for her harmful behavior, which had caused her to put her nursing studies temporarily on hold. Number 1. Sophie Taylor. 23-year-old Welsh woman Melissa Pasticchio had been in a long-term romantic relationship with Michael Wheeler, and in the summer of 2016 was living with him at his parents' home. It was around that time that 22-year-old Wheeler reportedly began talking to another woman, later identified as Sophie Taylor, also 22. The man eventually ended his relationship with Pasticchio in order to pursue Taylor, a decision that resulted in considerable friction between the two women, who began exchanging expletive-laced insults on social media on a regular basis. In August of 2016, Wheeler and Taylor broke up, and the former then got back together with Pasticchio. Taylor subsequently approached the couple and demanded her money back from a motorcycle she'd allegedly bought Wheeler shortly before the end of their relationship. The couple refused to give the young woman any money, and in what was reported as an attempt to intimidate Taylor, they then proceeded to follow her around town and shout abuse at her. Court documents detailed how the contentious love rivalry came to a tragic conclusion in the early morning hours of August the 22nd. On that day, Wheeler and Pasticchio began tailing Taylor's black BMW in separate cars. A high-speed pursuit, sequences of which were captured by traffic cameras, then ensued on the streets of Cardiff. Taylor was ultimately killed, following what was characterized as a Fast and Furious-style car chase, after colliding with Wheeler's vehicle and careening into a nearby building. In the wake of the incident, both Wheeler and Pasticchio were arrested and charged with causing death by dangerous driving. Upon being convicted of the offense, they were consequently jailed for 6.5 years each. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have to give some of every paycheck to your arch rival or lose a little bit of hair every time you step outside? Let us know in the comments section below.